everyone, I'm Pat Cosentino, the Superintendent of Region 12, and we're here with a board member, Greg Cava, who has served for 4 years on the Region 12 Board of Education, and we're here to have a conversation with him to hear about his roles and responsibilities as a member of the Board of Education. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Pat.
Why don't you begin by telling everybody a little bit about yourself? You live in Roxbury.
Yeah, I live in Roxbury. I've been in town for about 16, 17, I'm on my 17th year now, starting soon.
Okay.
And I'm married. I have 2 children. Many people in Region 12 know my wife, Martha, who's been a substitute teacher, now teaching in another district away from here. And my 2 children have gone through Region 12. One went from kindergarten, graduated from 12th grade here, and the other one is currently a sophomore at the Chippewa, who started here in kindergarten. So they've been through the system, and I'm quite familiar with it. Before I became on the board, I was quite familiar with it as a parent.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And very involved in the music program, correct?
Very involved in the music program here. My older daughter is a music major. She's actually going to be a 4th-year student at university next year, so she'll be graduating after the year. And she is majoring in music, and so I was active in her early days, and then got active with both the chorus and the theater program. I was a music director 1 year for the show Annie Get Your Gun.
Okay.
When Chippewa Theater did that, I had the privilege to work with the great talented kids of Region 12.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So Greg, why don't you tell our viewers what it's like to be a board member? What are the roles? What are the responsibilities? Talk about, the kinds of things that you do.
Well, it's like nothing you would have imagined before you came on the board. Education is a unique area, and the prerogatives and the needs are, you think as a board going on the board, this is all going to be within your control, but you have to deal with teaching methods and pedagogy and how that gets handled in the real world. You have to deal with the State Board of Education and their needs and mandates. You've got federal education programs. And so there are a variety of things, some of which result in unfunded mandates that the board has to deal with.
Right.
So what it is it's trying to both promote education and enhance the education in the district so that our children are properly educated to take their place in the world as productive citizens, but also you have to represent the needs and interests of the community, and you have to balance the available funds, the available community prerogatives with the needs of the education.
Right.
And in terms of your priorities, the kids come first.
Absolutely.
But a board member has to balance all those needs.
Right.
It's easier for you as the superintendent to be the promoter of those, but you also have to function as the CEO of the district.
Sure.
And so there's always a tension there and a balance.
Absolutely.
But a board member stands at 30,000 feet, and a properly functioning board stands at 30,000 feet and looks down onto the district and gets the bird's eye view and tries to see the challenges.
Absolutely.
To figure out how that piece of how the community can be brought along to face and deal with those challenges.
Absolutely.
And it's not always easy because there are frequently multiple ones, and you have to put them in perspective and deal with them all.
Right. And not everyone sees the big picture.
No.
And so you get little pockets of issues and concerns, but people don't really see the big picture.
Well, no, they don't. I mean, a lot of people, I know I was one who was always, well, I don't like this idea of teaching to the test. And I think we saw a teacher that retired in New York. There's a piece in the New York Times about how he just got disgusted with the fact that that's what they were doing, and
Sure.
they weren't really doing education. Well, that's a fine thing, but when the state board and when the legislature hands down a requirement that teachers are going to be evaluated 45% on the test scores,
Exactly.
Suddenly testing takes on a different dimension. And
Exactly.
it's easy to want to dismiss it and say, well, we don't have to worry about it. Well, yes, but our teachers do, and we do.
Right, absolutely. So let's go back about
And that's just one example.
Oh yeah. About 2 years before I got here, the board decided to do some strategic planning with members from the community, and that planning committee came up with 3 goals that would be worked on from 2012 to 2017. Do you want to talk about them?
Sure.
The first one, the curriculum goal.
Yeah, I think the idea is that we knew from presentations and from information that the state was changing the curriculum in a variety of subjects, some sooner than others, but that the curriculum was in flux. That we needed to educate our children, the children that are here now, for a different world than you and I were educated for.
Absolutely.
Their world is changing. It's changing rapidly. The advent of technology, the least common denominator approach to everything that we have, the globalization has created a different landscape, and we need to educate them for that landscape. We need to prepare them for that. You know, a classic example was the presentation last night where we watched children, 7th graders, 8th graders, manipulate computers to do design.
Right.
Because let's face it, design is done on computers now. It's not done on paper so much. And their world is going to be, and that's been changing for some time, but their world's going to be entirely different. We have to be there. So we saw the need to incorporate those 21st century skills, the ability to collaborate, which is incredibly important in today's modern business environment, and the ability to have all those skills and to be digitally literate and all those necessities for having a job in the modern world.
Right.
And so we saw a need to adjust the curriculum. We had to bring that along, and we had to do it comprehensively, and we had to do it quickly.
Absolutely.
Because of the needs that are coming down the pipe.
And so we have a curriculum goal, we have a technology goal. Now you are very pro technology, and you know that this year's budget includes laptops for the teachers and Chromebooks for grades 8, 9, and 10, which I know you support. Talk about technology and the importance of that.
When I was in law school, as you know, I practiced law for a living, and when I was in law school back in the early 1980s, we still researched out of books.
Yes.
We went to digests in the library to do our research.
The stacks.
The stacks.
Yes.
And they had just introduced computer-assisted legal research.
Okay.
Now today, the only time I go to a law library is when I'm in a courthouse and I happen to need something and I don't have access to a computer.
Okay.
It's all done on computers now.
Right.
So I was one of those transition people who first learned how to do it but was still basically a book person.
Right.
That changed over my career, and I became a devotee of technology. When I went out to form my own practice, after practicing with a big firm for a long time, I left and went out to form my own practice in 2007. I decided I would have digital files, I would use technology, and I became a big adopter of technology, and use it to run my practice and to assist me in all ways. And that is the direction of the world.
Absolutely.
I cannot envision students coming into the legal profession who do not understand how to run a variety of programs on computers, especially the research component.
Absolutely.
And that's the law, which you think of as a fusty place in a law library with books, and it's digital. And that's the direction things are going. So I think it's very important for our children to have a strong digital foundation. Look, in 2 years, they're going to change the whole standardized testing regime.
That's right.
And it's all going to be done on computers.
That's
There won't be any
exactly
more
right.
paper tests and filling in little circles with number 2 pencils. You won't even need the number 2 pencil.
That's right.
And that is where we are going to be within 2 years. And if we do not get technology off the ground now, and by now I mean like last year,
Right.
or better yet, the year before that. I mean, that's how fast it has to be
Sure.
there. We're not going to be ready, and we're going to be leaving our kids behind.
Absolutely.
And that's unforgivable.
Right. And that's one of the reasons where some people aren't happy with me that I'm moving too fast. I believe we really can't move fast enough. I think, we really have to make sure when our kids are leaving Chapag that they are prepared for a world that is a technological world, and a world that forces kids to think critically and work cooperatively and be able to solve problems and be involved in real world problems and solutions. And every year we wait is another class that graduates. So that's part of my reason of really pushing.
No, I understand. Look, I think the worst invention in history probably was the motor car, because it absolutely changed the way we live. The electric light was probably up there high on that list too, because it changed us from being you went to bed when the sun went down.
Right.
And when it got dark, and you got up when the sun came up, and you had the rhythms your body physiologically does, or the way we people lived. That's all different now.
Sure, sure, sure.
And the whole world has changed. And the problem is that you could say I want to live my life the old way, and you can.
Right.
But we're a public educational institution, and we have to bring our kids into a world where most of them are going to inhabit. I mean, what was it? It was the Greek Heraclitus. The only constant in the world is change.
Exactly.
And change, and this is one thing I've struggled with over the years, because I haven't liked the changes in my profession, for example. It's become less a vaunted profession where people seek your advice and more a commodity practice.
Okay.
And I don't like that kind of change, but if you don't manage the change manages you.
Right.
And the difficulty we're facing in this region, the primary difficulty, is our population is shrinking, and we have no control over it. It's not us.
Right.
It's also every region around us. And I think that if we don't manage that, we're going to miss a great opportunity, because while change can be unsettling, it also presents opportunities.
Right.
And if you don't harness those opportunities, you waste them, you miss them, and you come out much the poorer for it. Because the change is happening whether you want it to or not.
Exactly.
And therefore you have to take advantage of those opportunities.
So that brings us to goal 3, which is dealing with the declining enrollment, the aging facilities, and the high cost of educating our population. Not that we're going to get deeply into this topic, but do you want to talk about consolidation and how you feel about that, or any of those issues?
Well,
facilities, anything?
I think we have a challenging environment on facilities. We have older buildings, very old buildings. In fact, the buildings we have are about the age of the first school I went to when I went to school.
Okay.
And bear in mind that when I started elementary school in kindergarten, must have been 1962.
Okay.
The buildings that what I went to were about the same age as the ones we have now.
Sure.
And our buildings, the fact that they're old, they're quaint, some of them, we've done our best to keep them modern, but they don't have the kind of infrastructure that makes it easy for us to adapt to the new technology. The installation of smart boards, for example, was a complicated endeavor because the electrical infrastructure just really wasn't there.
Right.
And it's not easy to change that infrastructure, because even just going into the ceiling tiles, they're covered with dust and they're old, and
Right.
it creates environmental issues. The buildings are expensive to maintain. So the physical plant is a challenge that we've been managing as best we can. But I think that when you look at that, and when you look at the declining enrollment, and when you look at a whole host of topics, you say to yourself, these are challenges. What is the vision?
Right.
And I think the whole strategic planning process was to have a vision, to say, what will Region 12 be in 2023? Where will we be 10 years from now? Mm-hmm. And how will we continue to be a region with a very, very good school system, with a great school system, in fact? How can we achieve that? How can we be the magnet that other districts who are facing similar, perhaps some of them even worse problems of this nature, will want to come to? How do we become the magnet? How do we become the place that people want to come to? Because, what happens when school districts dwindle in size is eventually you have to reorganize them. And what happens when you reorganize them is you tend to lose control. Mm-hmm. And I think that people in our district, one of the senses I got is they treasure the control that they have over their lives. They live in a town, they feel like they have some control over their lives. They're not being pressed from all sides quite as much here. Their children, as mine were, able to grow up in an environment that you would have had to go back into the 50s, if not the 30s, to get in the more sophisticated places to our south. And I think that people treasure that. But what happens when you lose control of the change and you don't manage it, you don't make it your friend, and you don't make yourself the attraction, then what ends up happening is you lose control. And I think that what we're trying to maintain is the strong local control that has given us a good school district that we like. And the way to maintain that is to stay on top of it and keep Chapag the place that people want to come to.
Absolutely.
Keep the program here for our high school at the high level. And this means that we have to consider what is the most important thing. I mean, I know some people have said they're afraid what happens if if their elementary school were to close. Well, what happens if we lose the region?
Right.
And I think that's the greater potential, because if you think that these changes will result in your children being on the bus longer now, imagine if your children have to get on the bus and drive to Litchfield,
Right.
or somewhere else in the district where there's space, in the event that we can't remain relevant.
And I think you're right about that. I think part of what the strategic plan does is it really gives us a focus to let us be the facilitator of that change, and to make decisions based on data, based on academic programs, based on instructional technology, based on fiscal decisions. It's hard decision. There is a lot of emotionality in it, and we understand that and we appreciate that. But sometimes you have to make hard decisions so that you have improvements for the future. One of the things that I see, we did a tour last week of this building. We're in Chapag today. And I just see that, as you said, we maintain the buildings. But as Don O'Leary will say, who is the director of facilities, that this building really has lived its life. It's lived the good use of its life. And yes, we can do things to renovate it or whatever the decision is. We really have to look at this building and say, what is this building and this institution going to be like in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years? Because that's our job.
No,
that's our job.
That's right, and we have to find, I think, as economical a path forward. I mean, I think the idea of this planning process was to, number one, involve a widespread swath of the community, which I think we've done.
Absolutely.
We've gotten a lot of people involved. It was to listen to people's concerns and hear them.
Right.
To hear the concerns of towns that wanted to keep their schools, to hear the concerns of towns that wanted to make things more efficient, to look at the fiscal impacts, to figure out where we're going to be. We're blessed to have people that have volunteered for this process who have done some very good work with the data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by the time we're done, what we will have is the kind of data that a corporation or a business or anyone who is approaching things systematically, where not just money but results matter.
Right.
And results are really the key here. It won't do us any good if we make education economical but don't educate.
Exactly.
Similarly, if we educate but don't have a fiscal format that works, and so that we lose the region in the process, we haven't achieved anything there either.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to strike a balance, and I'm confident that when we're done, we will have data in front of us that makes the decision relatively clear.
Right.
Of what we ought to do. If it doesn't, then I think the process hasn't worked, and
Right.
I believe it will. But I think people have to be honest about this, because it's not any one person's personal preference.
Right.
It's how we collectively are able to educate our children in a region. This is a region. It's not
Exactly.
just 3 towns. It's
Exactly.
a region where together to do this, because it's a good group of people. It's a talented group of people. It's a lot of talented kids, and it's a lot of parents that care about their kids.
Mhm.
And I don't think that, as heated as things can get sometimes in these disputes, I don't think there's one parent out there that it doesn't believe that the reason they're there is because they want what's best for their children.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing on the board. I think that the kids are our focus in a big way, because this generation that we are educating now is the generation that those of us who are in middle age are going to be reliant upon to manage
Absolutely.
our future.
Absolutely.
And this country is in their hands, and we cannot fail them.
You're right.
And no matter whether it's important that we have a school in our town, or a particular way of teaching, or a particular program, none of that matters. What really matters is, how do we best educate the kids? How do we do what's right for them in a way that our community can support?
Right.
And it's a difficult balancing act, but that's what we have to do on the board, and it means that we can't always do everything that everyone wants.
Sure.
Because it's a bigger picture.
Yeah. Tell me your, as we begin to wrap up, your favorite part of being a board member. If
Well-
there is one. Is there a favorite part? Come on.
I think there is.
Okay.
I think it's interacting well, actually, the favorite part is when you get to see the kids and you get to see the result. I think it's going to see what they're doing and how they're doing it. And last night's presentation was terrific, where we had kids in there showing us some of the technology programs, the impressive technology programs and design programs our middle schoolers are doing. But I think that I think the fun part of it is to really engage on a very difficult topic that matters to our community, and wrestling with it and seeing the progress made.
Absolutely.
And I think we're making progress. I think we're headed in the right direction. We're not there yet. And there's going to be a few bumps and twists in the road before we get there, but I'm confident we will get there, and we'll get there in a way that we're proud of.
Absolutely. And I agree. I think some of the key points, we have to think regionally. We always have to do what's best for kids. And we can disagree, but we can disagree with civility and with respect. So I think that's always important too, as we, hassle and rumble around with these big issues that we're dealing with. So, anything else you want to add? It goes fast, the
No,
TV
it does.
show.
I think
right?
I think it does, and I think that's it really. I think the important thing to remember is that on a board of education there are a lot of frustrations, as you know from taking on the role of a superintendent. There are a lot of things you wish you could do that you can't do.
Right.
But there are an awful lot of things you can do.
Absolutely.
And I think that what we're trying to accomplish on this board is to move this region into the next phase, so that the children we're graduating from this region will take that proper, productive role, and will be able to pursue the happiness that that our country was dedicated to, the ability to achieve that satisfaction in life. And I think that's what we're about. And I'm confident. I'm very confident we're going to get there, Pat. And I think there's good leadership being shown. But remember, the proper functioning of the board is to stay out of the day-to-day operations. That's why we engage a superintendent, why you engage a great staff and building leaders and teaching staff and everyone down the line, so that functions, because we need the advice of professionals on how these schools operate, and that's why we hire the best people we can get.
Right. And that's what we say, continuous improvement, everyone always getting better.
That's right.
So with that said, I want to thank Greg Cava, who's done a great job. He's a wonderful member of the board, very supportive of all the children in the region, and really helping us to move forward. I'm Pat Cosentino. You're watching Region 12 Educational TV. Keep watching, and thank you very much.